3:30, so
Right.
we
So
can
I'll
keep going,
keep
but
everyone
people
for as
might
long
need
as
to
I like.
leave, yeah.
Okay. So what I was going to say was I'll do a bit of a whistle stop tour in order to finish at the appropriate time. But if anyone has anything they'd like me to stop on or ask any questions, please do, okay? So I'm talking to you a little bit about locating the literature. And Krista's already asked me this question, so I know a little bit about you. All students. Everyone's a student? Yeah? Are we studying level 6 and one level 7, is that right?
And some level 5.
And some level 5 as well. And what are we studying? We've got some nursing, I think. Lovely. What else? What?
Public health.
Sorry?
Public health.
Public health. Okay.
Science.
Got time? Yep. What about the back there?
History.
History. Excellent, best subject. And what are you studying at the moment? You're on the WIBIS programme. So it's a bit more of a general master's. What's the theme at the minute?
Oh, mine is computers.
Computer focused. Okay, right, so we've got a bit of variation, which is good. What we don't have any academics, independent researchers or paid researchers in the audience today.
I'm here.
Right, okay, so I'll just say who I am. I'm Ed Wilkinson, I'm a librarian. I odd job around the place. At the moment I'm Deputy Borough Librarian at Douglas. Previously, I was academic librarian at Middlesex University. I worked with law students, veterinary nursing, social care, and business students across my time. So, I had a range of different inquiries from a range of different topics. So, what is a literature review? So, the purpose of the literature review is to set the scene for the research you're going to be doing. It creates an overview to place the reader in your shoes so they understand what you're going to be doing, where you're drawing your research from. It also allows you to understand what already exists. And this is where the reading part comes in. You read, so you understand what's there, you draw those bits that are necessary for your research question together to create this review of the current state of knowledge, and then you can talk about how you're going to add to it. During it, you're going to look at ways in which you can describe what's already there, and look at how you can compare what's already there. Are there different ways of thinking about the topic? What are the methodologies being used? And how can they be brought together? So you're looking for dominant themes that are emerging. It's not just descriptive. You need to be critical, you need to examine what the literature you're using, you need to identify what the strengths of the research you're using are, and also what the weaknesses are. So by being critical, I don't mean that you're there saying, this is a rubbish article, it smelt, the picture, the colours were all wrong, etc. What we're looking at is the content, we're discussing where it does well, but also we're looking at where it could be improved. Hopefully that's going to help you identify your research. It's also useful to understand where people are in a broad agreement or where there is disagreement. Because then you're going to need to decide if there's disagreement where you're going to place yourself within the research argument. You may find yourself being on one side or another. So for example, if you're looking at knowledge management,
That's it.
You might say, well, knowledge management, I'm going to look at it from a Marxist perspective. There's a lot of disagreement here. Is knowledge management empowering of the worker, or is it the theft of the worker's intellectual property by the domineering capitalist? You choose where you're going to be placing yourself, but you need to be aware that there is that dichotomy around the topic, if that makes sense. And crucially for you, it highlights where the gap is. It explains to the reader, this is the stuff that's already there, this is the hole, I'm going to fill that hole. Yeah, so going back to our lighthouse, a good research question is a lighthouse because it guides you back onto your topic. As you're doing a literature review, you'll suddenly find that this is interesting, or that is interesting, or maybe I could apply that model and that model at the same time, and suddenly you start bloating. So you need to focus in using the research question, and the literature review helps you focus in. You can say, well, this might be very interesting, but is it relevant to my research question? And that way you can cut out those sections of the literature that aren't associated with your research question and focus it very much more tightly and narrowly. Does that make sense? Just to talk a bit about the research question, here it is. This is the research process. So the idea appears, we do a lot of reading. We get an idea of what our problem might be. So we do a lot of reading in order to formulate more questions. And then we do some more reading in order to start designing how we're going to do the research. So we start to read about our methodology, what we're going to apply. Then we start data collecting, data analysis, then we start answering a question, interpreting our results, and then we start reading again, comparing it with other research, identifying more holes that we've now opened up, and then we can start coming up with new ideas. So there is a constant cycle going round and round and round of the literature review feeding into the next research question. It's been 2 years since I last talked about this topic. Excited to find out what's going to come up next. Well, one of the things that's going to come up next is types of review, because there are 2 types. If you are a doctor, you're probably going to be doing a systematic review. If you are a historian, you're probably going to be doing a more narrative review. The difference, well, a systematic review is increasingly popular. It's based on the scientific methodology. The idea is that it's repeatable. You can undertake the review and then you explain exactly how to do it, and the next person can undertake exactly the same review in 5 years' time and find what's come out since you did yours, and they'll find everything you did, plus the new stuff in the last 5 years. 5 years after that, they can exactly repeat it again and find what's come out again. Systematic reviews are very scary, they're incredibly long, they're a lot of hard work, and really you probably don't need to worry about it as anything less than a doctoral student. Even doctoral students probably don't have time to do a full systematic review. So you're going to be focusing much more on the narrative review. Now, you might include some systematic elements. You might talk about how you did your search, how you built up your search, what keywords you used, how you combined them. Has everyone here been talked to by someone from the library about how to do searching? Yeah? Yeah, so as part of your literature review, you might talk about how you built that search. The narrative review will summarise the research finding, and it will have some kind of way of doing it. It might do it chronologically. So, in something to do with nursing, it might look at it on a year-by-year basis. In 2023, this many articles came out about this topic, heart conditions, and how to treat it using particular methods. In 2021, so many, 2022, and then you picked a nice historical view. Or you might do it as themes, emerging themes. So, if you were doing something like knowledge management, you might talk about knowledge as expertise. Can knowledge be taken out of the idea of expertise? You might look at it as knowledge as dominance by a governing class. You might look at it as knowledge as a democratizing process. So you're looking at these broad themes that are starting to emerge, and you're collecting the literature review around those themes. And those themes, based on your research question, will then feed into your work. And a narrative review can be a bit more subjective about how you choose your literature. You know, if you're doing a systematic review, you have to choose everything. And then you have to develop exclusion criteria to explain to the reader why you're removing things from your selection. This is how you do a systematic review. On the chart here, you can see there are 27 steps to a systematic review. You guys don't have to worry about this because you're not going to have to do it. But you might use certain components. So you might talk about describing the information sources you've used, which databases you've used, what dates you searched. If you search on a particular topic, did you put in a definition around the dates? I want information on women politicians between 1987 and 1994. for example. You might talk about that in your literature review. You might include how you combined those keywords, how you developed the keywords, how you combined them, which would take us back to a talk from somebody from the library. And also you might talk about how you chose the things that you were using in your literature review. You might talk about what criteria they had to have. That might be quite simple, it might be by the date. It might be have these words in the title. It might be that it had to be in a health setting in the last 2 years. You've excluded everything that's older than that. It will vary depending on your chosen topic. I imagine in IT you want stuff that's far more up to date. You're talking about the development of AI. You're not going to be looking for any articles that are from 2021 perhaps, focusing on the stuff emerging in this year. So in doing a systematic review, you're framing the question, you're identifying the research that's existing, you're assessing the quality of them, you're summarising the evidence, and then you're interpreting the findings. And you're doing that, those basic steps in any literature review. We'll do those in a narrative one as well. Does that make sense? Are we happy about the idea? Yeah? I'm sure it's been a very long day. You're not falling asleep yet? No? Okay. Right, searching for sources. This is the bit that a librarian should probably have come and talk to you about. There are lots of different sources that you might use in a literature review. And you can suddenly see that I've come bounding out because I've suddenly remembered what I'm talking about after a gap of a couple of years. So, you might use books. Probably going to use books in history. Obviously, you also want to be using primary sources, but various secondary sources are going to come in. Books give you the theory, they give you the broad overview, they're rubbish for the detail. We want detail, we're going into the journal articles. So if you're interested in the construction of knowledge in the long 18th century, the books on the idea of knowledge will give you the broad overview of what knowledge is and what the dominant conversations about that are. The journal articles will be applying it to the construction of knowledge by midshipmen in Nelson's Navy, for example. Yeah? So the journal article is much more specific, much more detailed. You might be looking at news, very up to date, that's especially common in business, but it might also be in the current affairs around certain sociological concepts. If you're doing business, no one's doing business? We won't worry about that then. Blogs and conference papers are great for idea generation. Has anyone looked at any conference papers? Because, we're kind of at a conference at the minute, yeah?
Can blogs be like podcasts as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I use blogs as a bit of a shorthand. They're really good for ideas. So we've had quite a few talks today on various different topics. They aren't necessarily the most authoritative, reliable things to draw on. You couldn't grab the PowerPoints, then write your dissertation and say, well, according to Katrina, because she's giving you an overview, she's giving you a summary. But you need to delve more deeply. So conference papers are a brilliant idea to learn about what's happening and to understand where some gaps are, because the people delivering them will often talk about where the gaps are. But then you need to start delving. Conference papers are usually divided into two types. Type 1, somebody's written a journal article, they got funding, and as part of getting funding, they have to deliver 2 conference papers about their journal article. In those circumstances, reading the journal article is better. Alternatively, they might have an idea. They might come to the conference and talk about the idea to see what feedback they get, where people add to it, where people criticise it, so they can go away and do that research. In which case, they haven't done the research, we can't really rely on it, it's just an idea. But it gives us ideas for what our research question might be. And remember, right at the beginning in the research question, it's choosing something that interests you. So listening to conferences, looking at blogs on our area, can give us ideas about something that might interest us. And podcasts. Also there's theses. Theses are very good for finding the citations. You can find a thesis, a PhD, a doctoral thesis on something that you're interested in. You can find lots and lots of references. You can then go away and start looking for it. But you can't...
Sorry, just jumping in. You can access all the ones from in the UK by something called Ethos.
Yeah, the British Library maintains something called Ethos, which maintains a database of doctoral theses It's not comprehensive, some are embargoed, sometimes people just don't put them on Ethos, but Ethos has a lot. So British Library Ethos. But of course, the problem with a thesis, you can also find them on Google Scholar if you don't know how well it necessarily did, how many corrections were involved, and also, of course, if you're looking at something on Google Scholar, how, whether it's the latest version, whether it's an early version that was done. You might also be looking at grey literature. That's especially true if you're looking at primary sources in history. Grey literature is anything that was created for a purpose other than just being circulated amongst researchers. So if you're looking at correspondence, you're talking about grey literature. If you're looking at government papers, you're looking at grey literature. If you're looking at policy papers within a certain organisational setting, such as healthcare, you're looking at grey literature. Grey literature is brilliant because it is very rapid turnover, which means that it is very up to date. It takes ages to publish a book. It takes a while to publish a journal article. But grey literature keeps coming out, bam, 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 very quickly. That's because it doesn't go through the same peer review process, which is a problem. But it is usually written by experts, and those experts usually have a desire to maintain their reputation as experts, so they don't put out anything. They put out something that's quite reputable, because otherwise other experts would read it and go, they don't know what they're talking about. It also is very good for very tiny areas of research. Okay? There are a few places that you can find stuff if it isn't in the library. These are a few of them. Base and Core, very good for getting research questions, research papers, sorry. It's always worth having a look at ResearchGate and Academia. Does anyone look at those? Yeah, ResearchGate, academia.edu. Basically Facebook for academics. Quite a good place to put. They regularly put up papers that are pre-publication onto that to share it, to get feedback. There is also EndNote, which is incorporated to Pernia, very sadly, which is a tool for managing your research, but it also assists you with finding open access versions of PDFs of particular documents. It looks for versions that aren't hidden behind papers. Now I'm going to skip lightly over keyword searching because UCM Library should be providing you with information about keyword searching. Yeah? So keyword searching is all about finding words. It's about finding keywords for your chosen area. Yeah? Is everyone happy with that? Okay, you need to think about a few different things when you're doing that. And you've got this search thesaurus back up again. I think what's interesting is this corner over here is where the person who made this really wants to be writing. You can see it kind of emerging. The idea of this is linking together. And so that can be quite a helpful way of figuring out what you want to write about. We'll skip over it though. We want database search. So the keywords. Keywords, you've got a list of keywords, you combine them with the Boolean operators. Have you all done Boolean operators? Yes? Yes? Yeah? Okay, what are the Boolean operators?
Is it the and or the commas?
Yeah, the commas are associated with it, yeah. But the and and the or, yeah? Or is more, and is less, yeah? You combine words using big ors and the and. So if you're interested in kitten and puppy, say you're going to have a pet, you're trying to figure out which is best, kitten or puppy, which is best, kitten or puppy? Bit of research. Figure out which is best. You do kitten or puppy, and you get everything about kittens, everything about puppies. You do kitten and puppy, you only get the information that uses both of those terms. And that applies, of course, to whatever research you're doing. So when you're doing research as well, if you're doing research, you might be interested in travelling, travellers, traveller. You can use truncation on databases, but I'm going to skip over this because this is really what the language should be talking about, and I'm sure they already have. You're familiar with truncation? Yeah? Nods? Shakes? Yeah? Okay. Citation searching. When you're doing your literature review, once you've found some good journal articles, hit their reference list. Hit the bibliography of that, because you're going to find a load more. It'll start snowballing at that point, you'll start getting lost in material. So always use citation searching. Right, hot topic now. Who uses ChatGPT et al.? Yeah, cool. Who uses the paid version? You use the paid version. Excellent. Okay. I don't know about that. My experiments being with the free version, because I assumed that all students would use the free version rather than forking out, what is it, $20 a month, is it?
20 quid a month.
20 quid a month for ChatGPT. So, do we know what ChatGPT is? Yeah?
It's basically, to put it in basic computer terms, it's basically a algorithm which is very good at coming up with things which sound convincing. If you don't really like it, I've heard it described rather as a bullshit engine.
Yes, but it can be. We'll look at that in just a minute. Is it artificial intelligence? Do we accept the idea that it's intelligent? I don't. I call it simulated intelligence. It makes it look like it's intelligent. It isn't actually intelligent. You can't go along and ask it to solve the problems of the world, because all it does is produce a number of words in an order that's likely to replicate how a human would produce them until its job is. Yeah? So it is useful for things, though. It is useful for helping us select methodology. We can ask it, you know, with this, within these parameters, what's the best methodology to use? Summarise in order of the most likely methodology. And it can produce that and explain why. It's really good for editing and proofreading our work, which is very helpful if English isn't your first language, or if you're lousy at spelling. You've got dyslexia, for example. It can help edit, it can help proofread, so it's quite good for those. You can ask it to summarise, and it can sometimes draw attention to gaps, so it can help you generate ideas, a bit like going with blogs. And it can help us refine and develop a research question. It is, though, as I say, it is just a chatbot. It doesn't repeat, so make sure you capture what it says the first time, because if you put the same thing in, it won't necessarily produce the same thing back. So you can't use it systematically. It won't produce critical essays for you. It will produce, you know, something that you can then build on, but it won't produce A grades, as somebody has put it. No one's awarded ChatGPT a first. And a 2-1 million. And its referencing is frankly shocking.
I remember a time some lawyer decided to use ChatGPT to generate his case report, and it wound up referencing multiple cases which do not exist.
And we'll look at that in just a moment. Yes, it does. So, good questions to ask about ChatGPT. Does your institution allow it? If your institution says it's banned, don't use it. If
Can
your
I just
institution...
interject there just very, very quickly on the UCM? Are you all going through UCM? Yeah, so this year on the assignment briefs, they've actually put a little bit, they discussed it all last year, and they've put a little bit saying it does welcome it, it does encourage it, but within certain boundaries, and it lists it. So the University of Chester is fine with it. Check on your assignment brief to the extent.
I don't think they are with all of them. I'm pretty sure we've had one that mentions it's explicitly not allowed.
There are certain aspects of it are, but the actual brief, you're in a different arm in the business department, but I know all of my briefs that have gone out this year, just the 2023 is the first time it's coming. But at the Chester conference last year, they're very welcoming towards it, and they think it should be used in a creative way, in a safe way, to help encourage.
We have to reference it though, saying that we have used it from Chester.
Brilliant.
Oh yeah, if you're using what they've said in your essays, yeah, I don't think they're encouraging you to use it in their essays, but I think they are encouraging, as Ed said before, to use it to help generate some methodologies and that sort of idea.
Research.
Yeah, as a research aid there, and as a creativity aid if you're more in the creative sphere. So it's not a no at Chester.
So, other questions. How can you use it to avoid plagiarism? How can you reference it? Well, if you're using APA currently put together guidelines on exactly how to reference it, because APA are amazing. Do you guys all use APA? I see the history department are shaking their heads sadly. Yeah, what do you have to use?
Use Mix APA and NHRA.
God, a mix. Mad idea. Whose mad idea was that? A mix. Okay. Cool. Well, APA is very helpful because APA has a single authority. The American Psychological Association produce APA, and how they say it's done is the way it's done. Institutions may, I'm trying to find a polite way of saying it, they might muck around with it, and that's down to the institution. But APA produce a blog where they explore these issues, they discuss exactly how to. So up until recently they said it should be cited as personal communication. Now they say that it should be cited in a different way, but that the chat engine ought to be cited as the author. So have a look at APA to find out exactly how to reference it. So, if you are, as I say, whenever you paraphrase or incorporate into your own work something that isn't your work, then what do? We reference. Yeah? We need to acknowledge its uses. So if you're using it as a proofreader or an editor, then you should say so, and you will have guidelines exactly how to do that. And you should also take care to vet the secondary sources that it cites, because it's rubbish at it, because it makes them up. Yeah? All it does is generate word, what's going to be the next word? Quick look, the most likely next word's going to be that. The most likely next word's going to... So if you're looking at a journal article, what's the first word most likely to be? Going to be the author, isn't it? So it generates a summary.
I mean, the critical point of this is that ChatGPT retrieves information from the public domain.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about
But
that.
if you ask it to go back
Yeah.
to review what information it's got, it's not able to do that.
Ultimately, it's generating a sequence of words. Word followed by word, followed by word, followed by word. So if it's generating a journal article, it will generate you a journal article. If that journal article exists, you'll be very lucky.
But on the other hand, if you ask it to produce a reading list for your own topic, then it will
Yeah.
produce that accurately.
It will produce a reading list, and a lot of the time the things on the reading list will be inaccurate. So, for example, we'll skip ahead. We'll move past prompt, we'll come back to prompt engineering. Here's a reference list that I asked ChatGPT to make for me. On the subject of the Byzantine wall in Cyprus. I actually specified that I wanted it to run from 1050 to 1190. So you see I've got a range of different things. I've got books, I've got journal articles. And then I went through and I checked. So, here's what I came up with. First one's Golden. Actually exists. Definite book. Read it. Really good. It also covered the period I was interested in. It was helpful. Second one is also a book. It is the wrong period. It's from 1191, and I asked it specifically for the time period up to 1190. So it might have some material casting back, setting a context, but it doesn't really have very much on the topic. The next one, it got the date wrong, because otherwise it's a book. Fourth one, it does exist, the date's wrong again, but also it's a full volume thing, and it's not told me what volume I need to look at. The fifth one, first journal article, doesn't exist at all. The sixth one, also a journal article, doesn't exist. Seventh one, Metcalfe, is correct. It's not about medieval Cyprus. And the date is wrong. Next one, I loved. Papakostas, genuine academic, teaches in the UK. Area of speciality, Byzantine history and the medieval economy. He has never written the economic history of medieval Cyprus, however. He hasn't published it in Al-Masak, and at 15 pages long, it's unlikely to cover the entire economic history of Cyprus in the medieval period. Pardini doesn't exist. Number 10, date is wrong. It's actually 1951. and editions came out in 68 and 71, so wrong there as well. The struggle for self-determination in the 1940s does exist, although that's not the author or the year, and it doesn't cover the time period I was interested in, which was about 900 years before that. And number 12 just doesn't exist either. Although there is a Cyprus Research Centre, they haven't produced a historical outline of Cyprus, and Vassalo is a member of the Cyprus Research Centre but hasn't written any outlines. So the problem, all of these, if you were just to put them in your essay and submit it, and someone was to go to trouble of looking, they'd immediately know that this was produced by an a simulated intelligence. So a core component is to check the sources it cites. So it will be making up. It's just generating from human knowledge what you think you're going to want to hear. Also think about how you ask it to do something. And I'm sure you've got a lot of experience of how to ask it to do particular things. It's called prompt engineering. It's quite a well-paid job, incidentally. And consider the difference between the first question here, write 10 recipe blocks, or the much more detailed question that you could put into it, generate 10 quick prep dinner meal ideas for recipe blogs, with each idea including a title and a one-sentence description. These blogs will be written for an audience of parents looking for easy to prepare family meals. Output the results as a bulleted list. So you've explained much more carefully what you wanted to do. Yeah? And so when you're asking it questions, think about the questions. We go back to words. We need to think of the right words to put in, formulate it in the right way. And yes, I am aware of the time. So that's prompt engineering. There we go. Any questions? How do you feel about your work? Confident? Yeah? So you're feeling pretty settled, pretty blasé about the whole process?
No.
No. Okay. You got your research questions?
Yes.
You've got an idea, you're going to start narrowing it down? Yes? Research questions? Yeah?
We don't do questions.
Sorry?
We don't do questions.
You don't do questions, of course, because you do projects, yes. Cyber security projects, isn't it?
That's the cyber degree.
Yeah.
I do the development projects. Development projects.
Development, as in developing.
Like software, websites. Yeah.
Okay. Still got to do coding?
Yeah.
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 Do you have to sort of explain how you're going to go about the process?
I think so.
Yeah. So that would be sort of your version of literature.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well, in that case, it's very late, and I've kept you way past the time I was meant to finish, haven't I? So if no one's got any questions, I will bid you adieu. Thank you very much.